Restoring Men and History, December 1776. What was it like for the Americans? They had been fighting and losing. Things were actually quite bleak for the Americans. They had been losing for months and retreating. The morale was very low. Re-enlistments were coming up soon. It was a crisis for the Americans. When they had crossed, many did not have shirts, shoes, and were hungry. They were in very bad shape. They had desertions, and the army was much less than it had been. When they marched across the Delaware, some were unrecognizable. Blood was in the snow because they had no shoes, some of the men. Washington ordered this to be read out loud to the troops around the campfires around December 23rd, 1776. And the words inspired them for that famous crossing on Christmas night. Thomas Paine wrote these words, The Crisis, December 23rd, 1776. These are the times that try men's souls. Summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in the crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. So you've seen these times, and they are here now. So you can stand by the Constitution and the Republic now. And by the way, you're going to go through times like this as a man. So how will you face it? How will you deal with it? The love and thanks of man and woman, you want that, right? And by the way, your children will thank you as well. People and men that cannot deal with adversity and suffering will shrink from the service of their country, he's saying. Weak men will flee, strong men will stick. Do you feel like this country and its principles are worth standing for? Do you feel like this country and its principles are worth standing for? If you are in comfort, you may feel like, hey, it's okay. Things are going to get better. It'll be okay. They'll do it in Washington. I'm sure they'll fix it. We'll get it right. And you may say it's okay until it's gone. And it slips away little by little. If you are complacent, you may not see it or want to see it. You may not want to see the harsh truth, right? You might not want to see the harsh truth. The men with the virtue of resolve and grit will be able to stand. And they will stand for freedom. If you can face the truth and see it for what it is, and know what trading freedom for comfort could cost you and your children. Let's go on. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Now, that's a big statement, right? He compares tyranny to what? Hell. And we know back then hell was eternal damnation. They believed that. It was an enormous deal. That's about as bad as you can call something back then. Eternal damnation, complete pain all the time, never ending, never ceasing. That's what he thinks tyranny's like, hell. And he tells them what is coming, right? He says a lot of adversity is coming. Not easily conquered, but you can do it. So he gives them the truth, but he says you can do it. It's not going to be easy, guys. You better get ready. Better get in the game. Better wake up. You're going to be put through it. Are you willing to sacrifice? Yet we have this consolation with us, he goes on to say, the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. So it might be tougher, but that makes it all the more beautiful, right? All the more glorious. And that's great, right? If you can make it, if you can persevere, the more glorious the triumph. And this applies to other things, right? Building a business, building a marriage. If you can overcome the adversity, obstacles, and problems, you have more to celebrate, right? You have a difficult job and you can do all the assignments and overcome it. That's an accomplishment, right? The more what? Fulfillment for you. And you also will learn through those obstacles and adversities, right? You'll grow as a man. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. So it's kind of a disposable society, right? We just buy new shoes instead of fixing them up. Do we buy quality shoes that you take and have shined, or you shine yourself, and that you resole? Or do we throw shoes away? Do we throw a lot of things away, including life sometimes? So there's a magnificent value to overcoming tyranny. And you will be able to what? Esteem it highly. By the way, you'll grow from that. What is that worth? Heaven knows how to put a proper price on its goods, and it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. Heaven knows how to put a proper price upon its goods, and it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. So watch how high he rates freedom. How much does he value freedom? He places it after heaven, and tyranny is hell. So those are pretty strong statements about what he thinks about it. The highest value is heaven. He puts freedom with heaven. The lowest and most painful and most misery you can have is hell, eternal damnation. So do we value freedom like the founders, like Patrick Henry, George Washington? Are we ready to stand for freedom like they were? And is it at the top of your values? And by the way, that's a good thing to look at. What are your top 5 values? Security, freedom, love, what are they? Are people today seeing tyranny as hell? Do you have the high value for freedom or value for the illusion of security? That someone else can provide you security outside of God, a government. People and men that cannot deal with adversity and suffering will shrink from the service of their country. Weak men will flee, strong men will stick. Do you feel like this country and its principles are worth standing for? If you are in comfort, you may feel like, well, this will go away, everything will be okay, until it's gone and freedom is extinguished. If you're complacent, you just may not see it. You may be content doing something else and not paying attention. Or you may not want to see it. However, the men who see it and the men of virtue and resolve will be able to stand. But you men, if you can face the truth and see it for what it is, and know what trading freedom for comfort would look like and would cost you and your children and your families, you will be able to stand. Let's go on. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Now, that's a pretty big statement, isn't it? Because back in those days, hell was pretty bad, right? eternal damnation. When you make a comparison to hell back then, that's about the worst thing you can say, right? Forever, eternal damnation is like tyranny. They're the same to him. And he tells them also what is coming. Does he say it's going to be easy? Does he say, hey, you just, no. It says a lot of adversity, right? Not easily conquered. It's not going to be easy, guys, he's saying. You better get ready. You're going to be put through it, he's saying. Are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to suffer? He goes on. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the what? The triumph, right? So it might be tougher, but that will make it all the more beautiful, right? And that's great. If you can make it, he's saying, if you can persevere, the more glorious the triumph. And that applies, men, to other things in your life, right? As a man, whether you're building a business or a marriage, working on a difficult deal, working on a difficult job assignment, the more difficult, the more satisfaction you'll take from that when you overcome it, right? And the better it is, the more fulfillment you have. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly, he says. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. So do we value in the society what we throw away, what's disposable? It's kind of a disposable society, right? We throw away shoes, we throw away clothes, we throw away things. If it's easy to get, we don't value it as much, right? But if we have to work for it, we value it. So there will be a magnificent, but think about shoes. If you buy a really nice pair of shoes and you polish them all the time and you keep them up and you take them to the shoesmith and resole them, years later, you're pleased with those shoes, right? And you value them because A, they're expensive and they look nice and they're not just the throwaway shoes. So he's saying if we don't value it as much, this throwaway society, there'll be a magnificent value to overcoming tyranny. And you will be able to esteem it highly. The more work you put into things, the more you value it. The more work you put into things, the more you value them. You will value overcoming tyranny. By the way, you will grow from it, right? And what is that worth? How much is that worth to you to grow? So there'll be a magnificent value to sticking and overcoming tyranny, he's saying. And you will be able to esteem it highly, right? And that's something that you can keep with you eternally and internally. By the way, you'll grow from it, right? The more difficult it is to overcome, and if you succeed or even if you fail, you'll grow from that. And what is the value of that? The growth in you as a man. Heaven knows how to put a proper price upon its goods, and it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. So how much value does he put on freedom? Well, he compares it to heaven here, right? He puts it in the same sentence as heaven. So tyranny is hell, freedom's the opposite, heaven. And that's a high value on freedom. Do we have that today? Heaven's where you find perfection, right? Hell is complete misery. Eternal damnation, complete misery. Freedom is heaven. Now, do we value freedom like the founders? Would we be as upset for each transgression? Are we ready to stand for freedom like the founders and place it at the top of our value system? Are people seeing tyranny as hell? The opposite. What are your values? Where do you place freedom versus security and the other values? You should have a top 5 anyway, right? What are your top 5 values? As a man, what are your top 5 values that Is freedom at the top? Where does security rank? And without freedom, can you have the other values? In other words, if you took freedom from your top 5 values and you took that out, could you still have the other ones that you have on your list? So you need to know your values and where you place them, or you may get to a level of success and be at the wrong place anyway. So that's just a good value for a man. So going on, Britain, with an army to enforce their tyranny, has declared that she has a right not only to tax, but to bind us in all cases whatsoever. And if being bound in that manner is not slavery, then there is not such a thing as slavery up on earth. Now, here's another big, strong statement. It's hell, it's slavery. And notice he says all, bind us in all cases whatsoever. In other words, you'll have no freedom. They're going to bind you in all cases whatsoever. They can do anything they want to you if you lose this. So he's saying, pay attention. They want to bind us in all cases whatsoever. It's not just going to be a tax. They're going to increase it, increase it, increase it. And he's not holding back, right? You look at the strong language. Look at how much he loves freedom and despises tyranny, comparing it to hell and slavery. And he's putting this on paper again for all to see again. So he knows what's going to happen to him, right? He's risking it all. And this is not the first time. Even the expression is impious, for so unlimited a power can belong only to whom? Even the expression is impious, for so unlimited a power can belong only to whom? To God, he says. He says only unlimited power belongs to God, not to government. Because your rights come from where? They don't come from government. They come from God. And unlimited power does not belong to any man. It only belongs to God. Man is imperfect. God is perfect. Remember in Federalist 51, well, we haven't done it yet, but we will. But Madison writes in Federalist 51, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. That's later, and that comes later when Madison's working toward the Constitution. But the point is, God is perfect, man is imperfect. So you don't want this enormous, powerful government. So Paine knows and understands the limitations of man, and he knows that power must be limited.